as most of you guys probably all know, the 2024 AFL draft was absolutely stacked with talent. There were players coming left, right, and centre who were really trying to not only be in the top 10, but I think a normal draft would have 100% have been in one. Of course, we known for so long at this rate that 2024's AFL draft was really touted to be a near super draft in terms of depth, where they were saying that players who were taken from 10 to 20 could easily be, majority top 10 in most drafts and could be contending for top 5 in a lot of drafts. So because of this, there was bound to be a steal or two to a lot of teams. Again, Murphy Reed, who went to the Fremantle Dockers, was projected at one stage to be a top 10 pick. Again, it was said that he could possibly fall, but I don't think really anyone had him falling to the 17th overall pick. And then there was, of course, Luke Traynor, who was selected by Richmond at pick 21, who, before the start of the year happened, was actually said to be a top 5 pick potentially in some AFL scouts draft boards, and was of course touted to be the best defender in the class, and he fell all the way to pick 21. Again, there's a ton of others. Job Shanahan went at pick 30. The Whitlock brothers went at pick 27 and 33. But I think personally, there was one player who stands above them all as a guy who I think is potentially going to be the biggest steal of the draft, and so far looks to be the biggest steal. Again, before I do get into all of that and more, there is still a decent amount of you guys who watch these videos who are not yet subscribed to the channel. So if you could, do me a massive favor by leaving a like on this video, subscribing to the channel for all latest sports content and news. And without further ado, I'm going to go over the guy who I think was the biggest steal of the draft. The guy who Matthew Lloyd personally was so in love with. He had him as a top 10 lock and actually said he could potentially go top 5. A guy who was projected to be a top 10 picked player on 95% of draft boards out there, but fell all the way down to pick 23, and that does happen to be Harry Armstrong to the Richmond Football Club. Again, a guy who was touted to be the best key forward in the draft class, who most predictions out there had him going top 10 to a team like the Melbourne Demons, of course, or potentially Richmond with their second pick that they, of course, did have. And for some reason or another, just really fell down in the draft class. Again, there were a couple factors that go into this. I think, first of all, a lot of teams ended up just really focusing on midfielders and backmen because they thought that those teams who were in the top 20 weren't going to necessarily emphasize key forwards. Again, a lot of teams like St Kilda, who were selecting high, of course, didn't really need a key forward. So I think a couple teams thought that some good ones would drop. And that's kind of exactly what happened. Of course, I think the first one that really went off the board was Jonty Fall to Richmond, who went at pick 14. And he's a guy who wasn't necessarily supposed to be like even a top 3 drafted forward in this draft. But I think why he went so high is because a lot of teams were really interested in him, and he was just the guy that fit a lot of team systems. So a team like Sydney, we knew coming into the draft, apparently had massive interest in him because they needed a guy who could come in and crash the packs for their other players. So they wanted him desperately. So Richmond had to take him a little bit higher than what they thought they were going to. So they took him at pick 14. But a guy like Harry Armstrong, who is a leading key forward who more so can move higher up the ground and play, up in the midfield, right, as a marking option, very similar to what a Jeremy Cameron does. And again, that comparison was said by Matthew Lloyd. I think he wasn't necessarily needed by teams, but a team like Richmond, who had everything they needed, they got their crash the pack key forward to replace Tom Lynch and Jonty Fall. They'd got their midfielders and their small forward in Taj Houghton. They now needed that leading key forward, the key forward who can hopefully work up the ground and hit the scoreboard pretty well. They were able to, therefore, go out and get it, pick 23, which is absolutely insane. Again, I think this guy kicked the most goals out of all key forwards. He took like one of the highest marking numbers as well. Again, Matthew Lloyd, his coach at Halbury, is more high on him than he's been on a player in a long time. He was saying all these great things about, Harry Armstrong, even saying that Harry Armstrong, is one of the best players I think he's ever coached. I think he hasn't been this hyped on players since like Max and Ben King, who, I think they were the 2018 draft that those guys got taken in. He hasn't been as hyped on players since then, which is literally 5 to 6 years ago at this rate. And he, again, really, really likes what he sees with him. He said he straight away reminds him of like a Jeremy Cameron. I think there's been some people who have said Charlie Curnow as well, but I think more of that Jeremy Cameron comparison of a guy who can move up the ground really well, lead very strongly, and take a good mark while being a pretty good, accurate kick, should hopefully come in and help the Tigers out really well. Now, look, how many games will he play in 2025? Sorry, it's going to be hard to say. We got to remember Jack Riewoldt, I think, only played like 8 games in his first year with Richmond. I think Tom Lynch was pretty similar in his first year with Gold Coast. You have to look at all of those things and kind of realize and remember that it can take a lot of time for a key forward, and I think there is a chance he plays a lot of games just because this Richmond team is going to be screaming out for key forwards and is going to be really desperate. We got to remember McKelty Lafau, I think he's out for the first half of the year. Tom Lynch should hopefully play round 1, but he misses a ton of footy every single year. Apparently, from reports, Jacob Kazitsky has been moved down back this season. From the very early reports, he has been training with the backman. Of course, he started off as a backman for Hawthorn, so looks like he could be going back down there, meaning that the only key forwards options they really have is Liam Fawcett, who'll be a second-year man who's never played a game, Jonty Fall, a first-year guy who's never played a game, Harry Armstrong, a first-year guy who has never played a game, and, of course, Tom Sims, a first-year guy who's never played a game, Campbell Gray, who's 1.5 years in now, when it gets to next year, who has never played a game. Those are literally their key forward options. And then Samson Ryan, who, I don't know if Richmond fans really want to see Samson Ryan bloody ever play again, because goddamn, that guy gave me almost Tourette's every time I watched him play. I started to bloody trip out every time I'd see that guy go near the footy. It was like me watching Ben Griffiths or Tyrone Vickery back in the day. I would just start genuinely tweaking and, again, gaining like Tourette's while just watching it. It wasn't fun, I think a lot of Richmond fans are like that. But again, I think if Tom Lynch doesn't play round 1, which I very much hope he does, I think there'll be a lock that Armstrong will probably play. Again, more so, I would say it's like a 90% lock. It's more of a 100% of a lock that Jonty Fall would play if Tom Lynch didn't. Again, if Tom Lynch doesn't play, they need a guy who can come in and crash the packs. And even if he doesn't kick goals, as long as he brings it down to the ground and actually has an impact on the game, Jonty Fall could be that guy for Richmond. So he's probably more likely. So I kind of take that back. It's not as likely for Armstrong, but they'll probably play a guy like Bauer, which I think most of us have him in the 23 for the Tigers. And unfortunately, a guy like Samson Ryan is still probably ahead of Harry Armstrong. But again, I think it's a very, very high chance that not only will Ford probably debut in round 1, and that's if Tom Lynch doesn't play, but if Tom Lynch does play, they won't need that crash the pack guy in Jonty Fall. They'll probably go for the more leading type of guy who can move around the ground to help Tom Lynch, and that is Harry Armstrong. So he could genuinely be a bloke who comes in and plays very, very early on for the Tigers and hopefully gets that Jeremy Cameron type ceiling. That would be so awesome for the Tigers if they could get that out of pick 23. I mean, yeah, this could hopefully and legitimately be one of the biggest steals in the whole entire draft. But again, we're going to have to, of course, wait and see. I know, again, it's gonna be tough, but with how Richmond are going, you know, we'll have to wait and see. Again, if you haven't already, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for the latest AFL content, sports content, and news. Leave a like on this video and comment all of your thoughts and opinions down below. Do you guys think Armstrong will play pretty early on? Do you think he'll be the biggest steal in the 2024 AFL draft, or do you guys not? Again, don't forget to subscribe to my IRL/long channels and my gaming channels. All of the above will be getting linked in the description down below. But yeah, leave a like, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.